Okay, good morning, everybody. Hey, good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the April 26th meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Member Chaplin.
Here.
Member Chavez. Member Covert. Member Desart. Member DeCiani. Member Eckhoff. Member Garcia. Here. Member Hart. Member Krajewski. Member LaPlante. Member Ozog. Member Pachalski. Member Renahan. Member Rutledge. Here. Member Schwarzy. Member Selman. Member Tornatori. And Member Zay.
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. Do we have any public comment? No public comment. Okay, under Chairwoman's remarks, good morning, everyone. I'm advised that this, as you all know, this morning we're going to be having the Olympians at our 10 o'clock meeting. So to be respectful for them, I will be ending the meeting right before 10, and if we're going long, some of them will be zooming in and they're taking a break from their training schedule to be at this meeting. So we want to be mindful of the Olympians. So I will be ending the meeting like probably at 5 to 10 if we're not done with our business. And with that, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 12th Finance Committee meeting?
So moved.
I have a motion by Member Garcia and a second by Member Chavez. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. I would like to, can I have a motion on budget transfers, FIR 091622 from 420-622 from various companies in the accounting units. I have a motion by Member Pachalski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We move on to procurement requisitions. Member Krajewski, we have finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on change order FIP 0299A-19 recommendation for the approval of an amendment to a resolution for a change order amending our purchase order for contract issued to Baker Tilly.
I have a motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on a change order amendment to purchase order 4491-0001, which is issued to Federal Express for a contract extension through November 30th, 2022. No change in total contract.
Motion by Member Krajewski, second by Member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Krajewski. We move on to economic development. Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on approval of the contract EDP 014522, recommendation for the approval to Quad County Urban League to provide youth training program May 1st, 2022 through April 30th, 2023. Total amount $347,453.36, sole source.
I have a motion by Member Chavez and a second by Member Krajewski. Any discussion? Member Desart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful program and I'll definitely be a yes vote, but I was just wondering how it's broken down financially because it says there's only 8 months left in fiscal year 2022. And so that's $202,650. And there would be 4 months if it's January, February, March, April, 4 months in 2023 at $144,803. And if it's broken down by month, that would be almost $29,000 a month. And it just doesn't equal out for me. So I'm just wondering how this contract is broken down. If anybody has an answer for the question.
Thank you, Member Desart. I believe Lisa Shabak is online. Lisa, are you there?
All right, well, maybe I can have a discussion with somebody in between meetings.
Okay, yeah, we'll get you that answer then.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Desart. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, Member Chavez. We move on to judicial public safety and in Member Pachowski. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Move to discharge the Judicial Public Safety Committee.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Member Chowski, second by Member Selman to discharge JPS. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the motion carries. Member
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chowski.
I move to approve JPSP 0135-22 recommendation for the approval of contract purchase order of Cougar International Inc. for the purpose of audience seats for courtrooms 2005 and 2007 for contract amount $40,932.55.
We have a motion by member Chowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, member Chowski. We move on to Public Works and in member Ozak's absence, member Hart.
It's probably 30.
I move on FMP 0144-22, recommendation for the approval of contract to C. Amherst Plumbing and Heating, Inc. to provide time and material plumbing services as needed for county facilities.
I have a motion by member Hart, a second by member Salmon. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Hart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on PWP 0142-22, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Coon's Country Ford of Antioch for the purchase of one 2022 Ford Explorer four-door for Public Works.
I have a motion by member Hart, a second by member LaPlante, and I have a question from member Garcia.
Yeah, hi, quick question on this. I noticed I read through everything. I don't see that this is a hybrid or anything. I'm just wondering if I can get a few more specs on this car for Public Works in terms of what we're planning on doing. It's a hybrid?
Yes, this is not a hybrid, but I can tell you in Public Works, every single vehicle that comes up, we have the discussion whether we can go hybrid, electric. And in this case, given a supply chain, given the delivery time and given the needs of the department, it was determined by the committee that this was the best course of action. But that discussion it happens every single time.
Okay, so I guess what seems to be is the supply chain seems to be
Supply
slowing
chain,
us down in terms of like
I can
following.
tell you for a lot of the hybrids out there, the supply chain, they are not even accepting orders anymore.
Really?
They've closed the orders down because there's such a backlog.
All right, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Hart.
Thank you, Member Chaplin. I move on PWP 0143-22, recommendation for the approval of a contract to Rowell Chemical Corporation for furnish and deliver sodium hypochlorite for the Woodridge, Green Valley, and Knollwood wastewater facilities for Public Works.
Motion by member Hart, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, member Hart. We move on to technology. Member Selman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a brief committee update. You've all seen in your emails, IT is doing asset tagging for everyone, and that includes everyone here on the board. So if we have time after finance, obviously, depending on, we want to make sure we get them ready for county board. But if we do, please stop by and visit Joe and Wendy. And then if you don't catch them between finance, please find them after county board so we can get everyone's equipment tagged. With that, I move on TECO 15-22, amendment to a county contract 5492-1-serve. This is for Infor, our HR payroll system. It's adding 80 additional hours for a total amount of 18,000 added for a 70% increase.
I have a motion by member Selman, second by member Garcia. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Selman.
Thank you. I move on TEP 147-22, a recommendation for the approval of a contract to Revise LLC for professional services to plan, design, and implement a custom website and to provide annual hosting support and maintenance for IT. This covers April 27th, 2022 through April 26th, 2026, for a total contract of $188,600, and this is an ARPA item.
Okay, I have a motion by member Selman, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Selman.
Thank you. I move on TEP 148-22, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to Episerver for annual maintenance fees. This is May 24th, 2022 through May 23rd, 2023 for a total of $33,770.68.
I have a motion by member Selman, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Selman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion to combine items 4, 5, and 6.
I have a motion by member Selman and a second by member Chavez to combine items 4, 5, and 6. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Selman?
Right, thank you, Madam Chair. I move on TEP 149-22, a recommendation for approval to SHI International for laptops, monitors, and docks. This goes through April 27th, 2022 through April 26th, 2023 for a total of $75,000. Next, TEP 150-22, a recommendation for a purchase order to Insight Public Sector for laptops, monitors, docks, and accessories. This covers April 27th, 2022 through April 26th, 2023 for a contract total of $75,000. And lastly, TEP 151-22, a recommendation for the approval of a contract purchase order to CWG for laptops, monitors, and docking stations from April 27th, 2022 through April 26th, 2023 for a total of $75,000.
I have a motion by Member Selman, a second by Member Garcia. Member Zay, did you have a question? Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm just concerned because it seems like we buy our equipment from the same three companies all the time. I know it's a joint purchasing act, but you know, these people get a hand up because maybe they're the HP person or the Dell person or whatever. And it doesn't seem like we really, you know, buy equipment from the same three people all the time. And this has been going on for years. It's nothing new, but I mean, I'd like to see us maybe, you know, get different bids and put it on a level playing field where other companies can actually, you know, get in on these bids.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a good comment. And yes, I have Member Sarton and Member Selman.
Can we have someone, respond from the
Oh, yeah.
department?
Did you want to come up,
Explain why we
Anthony?
use that
Sure.
process?
Come on up. Yeah, thank you, Anthony.
Good morning. Sorry, I have a bit of a limp up here. So that members, that makes a lot of sense. We can look at that when this contract is up and open it up to other organizations. But in most cases, the three companies that you see, and maybe there's two or three more, come in usually with the lowest prices. So because of their size and their connections to some of those other organizations, but we're more than open to open it up and make sure that all organizations have the ability to at least reply to the bid process or the RFP process that we go through.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Member Sarton and then Member Selman.
Thank you. I had two questions about these three items as well, number 4, 5, and 6. Number one, why are these ARPA items? I thought that we had purchased all laptops, monitors, docking stations, et cetera, for the county with CARES Act dollars back in 2020. And number two, why three separate companies? Why not award one company to do all three of these?
I'll start with the
ARPA?
yeah. So these are items that we purchase in support of ARPA. So for individuals who are working remotely from home. So
but I thought we made all those purchases back in the CARES Act money in 2020. We made a
but
ton
this
of
is
technology
for
purchases.
a lot of it has to do with individuals who are new
New
to our organization or for replacements.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
And
And the second item, I'm sorry, the second question.
why three different companies?
Three companies to make it competitive so that we put it out to all three. Whoever comes back with the lowest price is who we go with.
But why do we need three companies? Why not whoever comes back to the lowest price, we go with that one company?
I'm sorry. I didn't-
Yeah,
I
I could
You're still not
answer,
answering why three
actually.
separate companies.
Because of competition is what the reason why we identified.
But if all
those
three of
companies.
these are the lowest bidder.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, we had a really robust conversation about this at 7:30. If people have follow-up questions, I'm happy to discuss them,
Well, you know
but
what,
he's
this,
answered
you know
the
what, this is,
question
You know
already.
what, I'm on
excuse
nine
me,
committees
wait,
already,
excuse me for
so,
one, hold on, please,
yeah.
everybody quiet for a second. I encourage discussion in my committee meetings.
Of course.
I understand that you had it in technology, but not everybody was there. So for transparency reasons, I believe this is an appropriate discussion to have here and now on this floor.
Right,
So
he's just answered it already, so I just want to make
Wait,
sure if
thank
there's
you, and
further
I-
discussion, I'm happy to follow
I
up.
understand, and I don't think Member Desart understood the answer,
Mhm.
but maybe Anthony, I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
I think each one of these might have been the lowest bid for the product
No.
that they were
That's
having.
correct.
And
It's
that's
on call. So this is really an open PO for all three. So
Open PO.
it's an open PO for all three.
All right, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, thank you, Member Salmon. With that, we move on to.
I'm sorry, I don't believe we voted.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you,
Motion
Madam Chair.
carries. Thank you. Okay, we move on to technology, to transportation, Member Pachowski.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chairman. I move to approve DTP 0136-22 recommendation approval of contract to Pacific Construction Services LLC for the removal and replacement of a off-site maintenance building for an estimated county cost of $6,861,879.
We have a motion by member Chakowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Chakowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0137-22 recommendation for approval of contract to BCR Automated Group LLC, DBA Roche Ford to deliver and furnish Ford motorcraft repair and replacement parts as needed for a total cost not to exceed $70,000.
Motion by member Chakowski, a second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Chakowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0138-22 recommendation for approval contract as Bear Alberts Consulting LLC to provide professional construction engineering services for the Division of Transportation not to exceed $400,000.
Motion by member Chakowski, second by member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Chakowski.
Thank you. Move to approve DTP 01339-22 recommendation for approval contract ESI Consultants Limited to provide professional construction engineering services 2022 pavement north-south program for a contract not to exceed $413,908.28.
We have a motion by member Chakowski, a second by member DeCiani. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member
Thank you,
Chakowski.
Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0140-22 recommendation for approval contract HW Lochner Inc. to provide professional structural engineering services upon request of Department of Transportation for a contract not to exceed $350,000.
Have a motion by member Chakowski, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Chakowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to approve DTP 0141-22 recommendation for approval contract Primera Engineers Limited to provide construction engineering services for the 2022 pavement maintenance north program for a contract not to exceed $406,011.54.
Motion by member Chakowski, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Chakowski.
And lastly, move to approve DTR 0190-22 and awarding resolution to Martin Construction Inc. for the 2022 retaining wall repair program for an estimated county cost of $134,104 per low bid.
Okay, we have a motion by member Chakowski, second by member Tornatori. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, member Chakowski. We move on to finance resolutions. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move on FI 0-0024-22, an ordinance determining the compensation of members of the DuPage County Board and the DuPage County Board Chairman for 2022.
Okay, I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Tornatori, and I see member Zay has a question. So go ahead, member
Yes,
Zay.
thanks, Madam Chair. You know, first of all, I don't know why these aren't divided out. I don't know when we started putting the county board and the county board chairman together. You know, I'm just getting uncomfortable with the spread here between the county board chair and our countywide. I mean, the county board chairman's position, we all know is not a full-time position. Our countywides are. I mean, I think this amount, as we went through CARES Act money and ARPA money, it's the board that runs the county. I mean, we've been doing heavy lifting here during this time. I just think that this is just a large amount for the county board chairman's position. I mean, we're not going to home rule. We don't have a chief executive, which he's supposed to be. I mean, we've promoted our staff. I mean, Nick is now our chief administrative officer. I mean, it just seems like we're top heavy with our salaries in the county board office and with this. So, I mean, I'm looking to amend it down to a level that I think where it was 12 years ago. If, you know, put that out there for discussion.
What was it?
It was 121,540. So it was 12 years ago.
Member Chakowski.
I'm just speaking in general, but I would like to have a comparison with the other counties. It seems to me they used to always get something like that. I don't know what they're doing in Cook, but I don't know what they're doing in Kane, Will, McHenry, and all of that, which I think would be relevant. You know, obviously, we want to have good people. We want to pay them well. But I would just be curious as to see where we're at as far as not only the county-wides, county board chairman, and the county commissioners, as it relates to the, surrounding counties.
Well, Member Chesky, I believe that there was a memo sent by the chairman.
Was there?
Yeah.
On February 15th.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was
he
sent
did
out.
it, yeah.
So
Oh, I didn't
there was
see
a
it.
memo with that information.
All right, thank you.
Member Krajewski?
Yeah, that's fine. That memo was sent out, but
When was that?
it's hard, well, couple months ago, it was like February, but it's,
Yeah.
but it's hard then, because then you gotta go and compare, like in Kane County, we did this before, in Kane County, they meet once a month for their board meetings. They don't have how many committees we have, we seem to have a lot more. In fact, I don't think there's any county around us that has as many meetings as we do, as many committees as we do. So if you're gonna look at the salaries, you gotta look at the time that's spent. So
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Any other discussion on this item? Member Zay, I don't know if anybody wants to, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I just, we value our department heads. And to talk about county-wides, our county-wides run a department basically, right? I mean, they are important. I mean, the treasurer, the clerk, the sheriff, people like that. And, they're here all the time. We know the chairman's position is not a full-time position. And I'm just uncomfortable with that spread. I mean, if we're paying the clerk 151 and the treasurer 151, we're paying the county board chairman 137 for a part-time. I mean, that just seems like just a big spread here. And my question is, do we have to vote on this today? Did we wait again until the last possible moment to do this?
No, we can wait, I believe till the 1st of May, or for our first meeting in May, we can approve this. Connor, right, the first meeting in May.
So it needs to be approved 180 days before the election. The election is November 6th. So 106 months before that would be May 6th.
May 6th. So
Or June 6th, sorry.
yeah, so my thoughts on this is, we did approve the salary back in May or June?
It'd be May 6th.
May 6th. So we did approve this amount back in 2018. And there was no concern at that time. So I'm just kind of curious about all of a sudden now there's this concern of the disparity. But in 2018, there was no, this was not talked about. So
Well, Madam Chair,
Yeah,
I mean,
go ahead, please.
it just, a lot's happened over this time. Obviously, we had a pandemic and we know how much the CARES Act money was basically distributed by the county board. County board came up with those options. ARPA money was distributed by the county board, came up with that ideas. I mean, I haven't seen any input, from the chairman on any of this. We all know, I mean, a wise man once told me it's the county board that runs the county, not the county board chairman. But I mean, if we're not giving raises to our county-wides, again, which are here, I mean, they run a department, they're here all the time, a larger department than the county board. I mean, if the board doesn't want to go with it, I'm fine with it, but I'm just getting growingly uncomfortable with this amount. And again, it's not because office is being run for or anything like that. It just seems like if we're not going to give our county-wides anything, then this seems like the role has diminished. The chief, I mean, it's entitled, but I don't know if it's really impractical what the county board chairman does. We're not, at one point it was made that way because there was talk of the county going for home rule, but again, that's been a long time that there's been no action on it. I mean, we do have a countywide elected chairman, but really, what does that do at that point, and how much power does that chair have?
Right. Well, I think when we look at these salaries, I think it's important that we look at the position of the job and not the individual in the job. So, because I think that's up to the voters when they vote to decide, they're actually reviewing us, right? If we're reelected or not. So I think it's really important that we focus on what the job entails. And maybe if we don't feel that this chairman's doing maybe what he should be doing, that doesn't mean that the next chairman won't be doing more. I'm just, kind of putting that out there. So I don't think we judge this on who's in the office. I think we judge all of these, all this compensation on what the job requires and what the job entails. So I don't think it's based on an individual. So I don't think we can, base this salary on the previous or on the current chairman's performance. I don't think that's fair to anybody else that's coming in. And I don't think it's fair in the county-wides as well to base any of those increases or decreases on the performance of that elected official, because I said that's up to the voter when they vote in November. So those are just my thoughts. I know Member Garcia had a comment and Member Krajewski.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Chaplin. This is not my first time going around with salary, looking at it. I worked for municipal government for 21 years, and I've gone through many salary, compensation studies. And it was always based on the job entitlement in terms of like what the job required. It wasn't who was in that job. It wasn't, it was what was the job that was being done and what were the job responsibilities. So if we're thinking about lessening, I'm just wondering, what are we taking off that's gonna, from the job that we didn't think 2 years ago was, why now do we think there's less job responsibility? So I guess we'd have to have some kind of job study to see, because I just think that it has to be some kind of job responsibility study and not just, we don't think whatever or whoever is doing a good job in the job right now. So that's it.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Member Member Krajewski.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna do that, what Member Garcia and what Member Chair Chaplin stated, and I think I'm on Jim Zay, I mean, statutorily, the county board runs this organization. Doesn't matter what positions or who's in what position, who's the chairman, board, the county board runs everything. So if we're looking at that, we should be raising the county board members' salaries and decreasing the chairman's salary. I mean, if you're gonna look at statutorily what runs this county and how DuPage County is set up. They've, over the years, you go back, even prior to I get on the board, some of the board members gave up some of their power that they had statutorily and gave it to the chairman, and they took it back, again, before I got here. But if you look at how it's supposed to be run, the county board members are the ones that do work to the chairman, if that's how you're gonna judge salaries. But I'm not sure that's what we want to do. But if we're gonna do that, then if we look at the job descriptions, we're the ones here that are doing the heavy lifting.
Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Desart and then Member Ozak.
Thank you. I guess I don't understand this discussion because I was not on this board back in 2016, 2017, when the salary for the county board chair of 136,959 was approved. I wasn't on the board then, but many of my Republican colleagues anyway were on the board at this time and approved that salary for the chairman again back in 2016, 2017. So I'm not sure I understand this discussion. Are they saying that that Chairman Cronin is not doing a good job and it's not worth the salary? Because that's what it sounds like to me. And again, we can't compensate the person in the job right now, but the actual title of the job, county board chairman. So I'm in favor of leaving this salary as it is right now. I know Chairman Cronin is not running again. So if my colleagues feel like he's not doing a good job to earn this kind of salary, then he's gone after this term anyway. So that would be my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Ozak.
First of all, I apologize for being late. Could you please bring me up to speed about what's been proposed?
Members, they had mentioned about reducing the county chair salary to.
I'm sure it's not a huge amount. It would be 121,540. But my problem is it's getting so much closer to our countywides. I mean, it continues to stay. We've frozen it, but again, our countywides are here 5 days a week. I mean, they work, and the chairs really not. I'm not talking about slashing it in half. I mean, it's just taking it back down to 121,540. That's all. And maybe this Republican who voted for it is trying to fix an error in the past.
Thank you, Member Zay. Member Ozak, did you want to continue or?
Again, to reiterate, Member Desart's issue, in 2018, the salary was set. So people agreed that at that time, the job was of that value. But I also do want to quote the chairman, as I recall during the 2018, the current chairman, during the 2018 election cycle, he said numerous times that he is a full-time chair and a part-time lawyer. So I think the issue here is that all of these jobs, unless you actually do a work study and analyze the job, every single one of us does this job differently. And I'm also going to bring up a little bit of history here. Back 2 years ago, Member Krajewski agreed with me at the time, the chairman, former Member Healy. I tried to get a referendum question to reduce the board by 6 positions, which would have automatically saved $300,000 plus benefits. So there was no appetite for that at that time. So You know, again, every one of us does different things. There's no actual job description for what we do. And you can argue that there's similar situation with the chair. So I would personally, I agree with keeping it where it's at, which was agreed to in 2018.
Thank you, Member Ozog. Member Eckhoff, then Member Selman.
By my count, we've got 182 days left, so we could vote on this in 2 weeks. Did you do your count?
Sorry, I actually took the opportunity to double check my math because my math was at best confusing, and I apologize for that. So because they start at different times, the board chair his term starts on the 5th of December. The countywide start on the 1st of December.
Plenty of time then.
You would have until June 5th by my math. So yes, you would have 2 weeks.
Right, so
Okay,
I guess
okay.
what I was gonna say is 10 years ago or so, before Chairman Cronin became chairman, I did suggest that the salary be rolled back a little bit because I didn't think he had the experience of Chairman Scholstrom, who had been there for 12 years and they acquired that and would take some time for him to do that. So I am on record doing that. I would favor no increase for us, but a 2% for the countywide.
Okay, thank you, Member Eckhoff. So I have Member Selman, Member Zay, and then Member Tornatori. So go ahead, Member Selman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It was brought up that some members of this board had proposed reducing the size of the board. And I just want to point, especially because I know we have new members, if you go to the transparency portal, the ad hoc committee on the size of the board did a 33-page final report comparing our work, both our workload and the areas that we work in to the collar counties as well as national counties. And it was decided by 18 members of this board that we would serve the public best if we kept the board at its size and compensated as is. So if anyone wants to read that report or has any questions, do let me know.
Thank you, Member Selman. So I'll get to you, Member Ozog. I have Member Tornatori, Member Chowski, and then Member Ozog. So Member Tornatori, Member Zay, I'm sorry. Member Zay, Tornatori, Chowski, and Ozog.
And I'm sorry, I should have explained this better. And the only reason I'm bringing this up because we used to give our countywides at least a 2% raise in 2 out of the 4 years. So they all were the same together and we've stopped that. So the gap between the chairman and the countywides was always going up. Now, when we've frozen our countywides and frozen our chairman, that you don't see that growing of the countywides who are here full time. That's why I'm concerned about, because we've zeroed them out. And we don't see that growth anymore, where you would see the salaries of our countywides getting more distance away from the county board chairman.
So would you like to propose a change to the countywide members aid to something 0022 or 2222 or what would you, do you want to make a proposal right now or do you want to have some more discussion, see what everybody else feels?
I like to hear what everybody else
Okay.
says, but I'd like to look at it because
Sure.
we've always tried to, I've done this for years.
Sure.
We've always tried to keep them all at the same amount. So I'd have to see what they're all making. And then would it be 00 for the first 2 years and then 22 for the next 2 years if we wanted to? And then in 2 years, when the other ones come up, it would be 2200. We always try to keep our countywides making the same amount. So, I mean, we'd have to see what the other ones are making. I'm not sure. We don't have that in front of us right now,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I mean, if that's what the board wants to do, I'm fine with it
Okay.
just take a quick look at it.
Yeah, we can discuss that. So we have Member Tornatori, Member Chowski, and Member Ozog. So go ahead, Member Tornatori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate what Member Zay has brought up. I'm not a clock puncher. I never have been. So if somebody's got a title and they have a job description and they do it, whether they do it in 4 hours or 6 hours or 8 hours, as long as it gets done, then I think that's what's important. And I believe that the chairman, Cronin, and I believe that whoever the future chairman will be, will do that. If not, we'll hold him or her accountable. If people recall, the chairman did take a reduction some years back in the stipend that he was receiving at that time. If there's an issue with whether somebody's full-time or not, then maybe we need to look at the job description. And it's never been a 40-hour job. And I don't know that it needs to be, but it doesn't minimize the responsibility of the job. I mean, I can tell you that during the pandemic, Chairman Cronin and I were constantly in communication with Springfield and IDPH and the health department and many others municipalities in order to solve the myriad of problems that took place. And whether he did that from home or somewhere else, and this isn't a defense of Chairman Cronin, who I think has done a good job, it's a defense of the job. If there's a concern about a gap, and I can understand that, then I think the solution is not necessarily to reduce the chairman, but possibly to talk about increasing the countywides. And I'm not sure that that's even what the countywides are looking for, or Mr. Zay is looking for at this point. But if there's a gap there, I think it's because the countywides have been somewhat stagnant over the period of time, as have we. We haven't taken a raise in a while. So we're talking about what, $15,000 or $16,000 difference. It's not that big a deal in the grand scheme of things. And at the end of the day, I really don't think that the chairman's role or responsibilities or productivity has certainly diminished in the last 4 years. It's only increased in the responsibility. So my thoughts.
Thank you, Member Tornatori. Member Pachowski?
Yes, I'd like to echo what Dawn Desart said, because it seems to me we voted on these in the past, and I don't see, as much as Jim and I are very close on voting and things like that, we have a new chairman coming in, and I just think that it would be more appropriate to leave the salaries as is. As far as our other countywides, if you look, we pay our countywides very well, and we always have. And it just seems to me with the new chairman coming in, I think we ought to maintain what we've previously done in the past, and unless we're doing something different with the job duties, which we're not. I echo what Sam said. You know, when we had the COVID-19, I think Chairman Cronin was doing a press conference every day downtown with the governor, which led to DuPage's prestige because he was the only county chairman there. So, you know, I think that it would be sending not a bad message, but I would feel more comfortable leaving it as is, knowing we're getting somebody new coming in. I think those people should be able to rely on what was there when they were decided to run. As Sam said, it's not a huge amount of money. And then if we have further discussion, it's about the job or job duties, and we should discuss that. But I would not be for increasing everything in any respect, and just leave everything as is, because I think that makes more sense.
Thank you, Member Pachowski. Member Ozak?
Two things. First of all, the committee, the ad hoc committee to reduce the size of the board did not all agree on the final report. And also, we did not all agree everyone did not vote yes about the idea of putting this question to the voters about reducing the size of the board. I just wanted that noted for the record. Also, I think we could consider, especially since Mr. McCarthy has told us we do still have a bit more time, that perhaps we table this issue until the next meeting, when we would be able to have everybody here. I think we've got a couple of people missing, so that would be a consideration.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Ozak. Member Rutledge, and then Member Desart.
Thanks, Chair Chaplin. I guess over the last 4 years, I think it's kind of a stretch to consider that Chairman Cronin worked part-time during our pandemic. So that's the first point I'd like to make, and had to be on call for all of those moments. Secondly, I think that we did a pay study not very long ago where we found that we were not paying our people enough, particularly our department heads. So I would support taking a look at least a COLA raise for the county-wides and keeping the chairman's salary as is. But in this kind of an environment, we are finding across the board, not just in government, but private enterprise, that generally we just don't pay people enough. And so I am not in favor of a reduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Selman. Member Krajewski?
Yeah, just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, let me, Member Desart, and then
That's
Member. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And I was going to bring this up under B, but since we're talking about the chairman's compensation, I'll bring it up in A, but I mean this for the chairman and across the board. One thing I would like to do, actually, Chairwoman Chaplin, is to get rid of the vehicle allowance. I know there's one countywide who does not use their vehicle allowance at all, and $5,400 per countywide elected. people don't use, in the private sector, nobody gets a vehicle allowance anymore. They get mileage. So if they go to Springfield for whatever, they get mileage for that. I'd like to, across the board from the chairman here under A to the various DuPage County elected officials under B, the next one, I'd like to save the county $27,000 by getting rid of the vehicle allowance. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Desart. Member Krajewski.
Yeah, I don't know, this maybe is more for B also, but you know, we got this thing from Jason and we talk about all the countywide being the same, but I notice, the regional superintendent gets money from the state, but she's, or that position, person that's in it. It's like $1,100 less than the auditor and the coroner and all the other countywide. So I'm just curious that, maybe we make that adjustment to get that to the exact same as these other ones. And then I'm not sure the reason behind this circuit court clerk and the sheriff. Something there why they get more than the other countywides, but I just noticed all the countywides that are saying this, the regional superintendent's like $1,100 less than the other ones. But, and probably doesn't get the stipend either, but the state stipend appears to be state from the state because every county is the same $6,500 stipend. So.
Okay, so thank you, Member Chair. So I just want to kind of summarize what we have going on here. So members say, okay, so first of all, I think there's consensus to leave the chairman's salary at the 136,000. Is that correct? Show of hands, everybody? Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, the next item I heard is that members A might want to propose increasing the countywide officials compensation, maybe 0, then 2. Jim, is that what you were maybe proposing? I'm just trying to get a sense of the committee. What?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for it, so
Is there a will of this committee to increase the elected officials' salary at all? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, Member Eckhoff and Member Krajewski. Go ahead, Member Eckhoff and Member Eckhoff, go ahead. Okay, and then Member Krajewski, is that?
I say, well, what about the regional superintendent to get it to the, it's $1,100 less than the other ones. I'm not sure why, but why wouldn't we just make them all the same?
Is there a will to increase the regional superintendent salary?
It looks like that's at 152.11 and the other ones are 151,362.
Okay,
So
no, I don't believe that there's a will of the committee to increase that either.
that's fine.
Okay.
And is there a reason why the sheriff and the circuit court clerk
Is there, I'm sorry, but
I said, what is there the reason behind the sheriff and the circuit court clerk making more than all the other countywide?
I think that was just the decision of the board at the time, maybe because of the responsibilities of those two offices. That was the decision that this body made.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to wonder what that reasoning was. The circuit court clerk, we know we keep hearing there's less and less filings and less filings. Maybe there's more work with the sheriff now, I don't know, but I was just curious what because they're much different than the other ones.
Okay, yeah, I think that was just how the board, decided to pay these, what we decided to pay these positions, so.
There's
right.
Each time, so when we decide to raise some, maybe that was a different cycle, so maybe decide the circuit court clerk and the sheriff should have got more last cycle.
Right.
Now we're here this cycle and we're saying nothing to the countywide. So now we're off. That's why I know Member Zay has been talking about over the many years, we would always try to look at, because we do 5 one cycle and 5 countywide the next cycle. And if we give some raises, then the next cycle we try to give the other ones raises, or if we give zeros, we do that to try to keep them on the same keel. But we have 2 from the last cycle that are substantially more than the current cycle, and I just don't know the rationale behind it. Did we give raises before?
Well, I guess what I'm hearing from the consensus of this committee right now is they want to leave all the salaries the same. So I guess in 4 years when the new board is seated, they can maybe address it at that time. But I'm 2 years, right? So I guess what I'm hearing from the committee is it the will of this committee to keep all of these salaries as is right now? Okay. Yes, okay. Member Desart and then Member Garcia.
I'm only one member, but I believe I'm hearing a consensus across the board. So we have a motion and a second. I'd like to call the vote and not table it. I don't want to table this.
Right.
Let's call the vote is my request.
Okay, Now I want to address your issue. Now, there was a member, Desart, talked about eliminating the car stipends for the countywide elected officials. Are we, is this the will of the board to eliminate the car stipends for the countywide elected officials? Raise hands. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So six. Okay, go ahead, Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair. If we pay them mileage, that usually is a better deal for the taxpayer to be able to deduct that. So that would be the reason that I would not want to take away the stipend, because we may actually pay more in mileage.
Okay, so it is, hang on one second. So, all right, I have Member Krajewski and then Member Desart. Member Krajewski, go ahead. And then
I
Member
was just
Desart.
saying, I mean, I think some of these are done in lieu of giving them a car, but I'm not sure which ones leave this facility to do stuff out for their job outside where they need a car and which ones don't. I'm guessing the state's attorney leaves a lot to go various things, would need business car, possibly the coroner, I don't know. But some of these, I think, were done in lieu of cars. But
Member Garcia, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Member Desart.
Thank you. I was just gonna say, I maybe we're gonna say the same thing, but some of these people, well, in corporate America, you don't get a car allowance anymore. You just don't. You get mileage, number one. Number two, I don't understand why some people, like, for example, the sheriff gets a $5,400 car allowance when he already drives a tricked out sheriff's vehicle. So why does he double dip like that?
Can anybody answer the car stipend issue, or who's driving what vehicles? We know what the car stipend is, but who's driving what vehicles, and give us a little background on that. Thank you.
So as the resolution is written right now, the sheriff's actually an either or, it's not both. And Mr. McCarthy, please tell me if that's incorrect.
No, it's currently drafted as an either or.
Yeah, so you can get the 5,400, or for statutory purposes, the county is to provide for the vehicle of some nature, the reasonable expenses of their office. So the sheriff currently elects to use his vehicle, to the best of my knowledge. I believe State's Attorney Berlin, and Mr. McCarthy, I'll look at you again, does use sometimes one of the state's attorney vehicles. But that is all I'm aware of for individuals using it at this time. But I can inquire with other countywides if that's what we're looking for.
To my knowledge, the state's attorney doesn't use any of the state's attorney investigator vehicles. My understanding is he uses his personal car.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Connor. Member Garcia.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this only because one of the things that we actually got out of COVID, which was terrible to say we got anything on COVID, was Zoom, team meetings. And so I feel like a lot of our meetings are now done online. So where they were driving to go to meetings, they are no longer doing that. They're doing everything online. So I think some of these things are now becoming a way of the past versus the way of the future. So I do think we need to reconsider whether we give them a car allowance or not.
Okay, so I'll ask the committee again, is it the consensus of this committee to eliminate the $5,400 car stipend? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's no consensus on that. So it appears that, do we have any further discussion on the, Member Krajewski?
is this a non-accountable plan where it just goes in their W-2? For these car allowances? I assume it's a non-accountable plan, meaning they don't turn in their mileage or anything, and therefore it goes in their W-2. They're not turning in mileage.
Correct. They do not turn in mileage.
So this goes right in their W-2.
That's correct.
Okay, so do we have any further discussion on these items? Okay, so seeing none, I think we had a motion and a second on this item. What was that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And we, Member Krajewski?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move on FI 0-0025-22, ordinance determining the compensation of various DuPage County elected officials for 2022.
I have a motion by Member Krajewski, a second by Member Desart. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski?
And those were 2022 through 2026, right? I move on FIR 0186-22, Resolution for acceptance appropriation of the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services Access and Visitation Grant.
Okay, I have a motion by member Krajewski, a second by member Garcia. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Member Krajewski.
Madam Chair, I move on FIR 0197-22, resolution allowing the use of ARPA funds for revenue replacement in the amount of 10 million.
I have a motion by member Krajewski, second by member Garcia. Any discussion? Oh, member Zay, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I'm just reading this resolution. I know we had discussion on this before, but I'm just not in favor of this. I mean, it says right here that we're gonna take the standard allowance option to spend part of $10 million of ARPA funds on a broader set of government expenses. I think we should keep it where it is, keep those safeguards in place. I mean, we're spending money. We haven't lost revenue. We've actually increased revenue. We've doubled our reserves. We have this money here. We've got projects going, and I just think that money should be safeguarded and not just put in there because it's a standard allowance. I mean, it just looks, if you read the top half of this resolution, it's all about revenue replacement, which we're not really replacing revenue. I mean, we're actually have more revenue than we've had in the past, and we should leave it where it is, keep those safeguards in place so ARPA funding is used where it's supposed to be used.
Yes, thank you, members. And I think I'm going to call Nick, if you can come up here for a second. Member Desart, you had a question, and then member.
No, I was
Rutledge.
just going to say, I agree 100% with members A, and that's why I was going to call for a roll call vote. We already had a discussion on this. I understand all the angles of it. It just seems disingenuous at best, unethical at worst. So I'd like a roll call vote, and I'll be a no.
Okay, thank you, member Desart. Member Rutledge, and then I'll let you go. Nick.
I'll agree with both members, Desart and members A. Our reserves are robust. Our sales tax revenues are in the 20% over budgeted. I think this $10 million needs to go to the people that are struggling still through the COVID pandemic. So I would also be a no on this.
Thank you, member Rutledge. Nick, would you mind just coming up just to refresh the board's how we came to this recommendation?
So everything everybody's saying is absolutely correct, but the 10 million is an option the board has at your disposal that the federal government made available to all of the entities who received ARPA funding. There's a straight $10 million that you can pull out for revenue replacement, and you do not have to prove revenue replacement. And so it's a choice that the board has to make. Do you want to keep it in the ARPA funds or pull it out? And basically the benefit of pulling it out is you can use it for additional government functions. You can use it for the original ARPA, however you'd like to proceed. But it is perfectly legally within your right to do this, but it's your choice. But the decision, we did not want to, the deadline is fast approaching to make the decision. And that's why we wanted to bring it up for consideration for the board.
Okay, thank you. I had just one quick question that I'll ask you to. So, Nick, if we were to leave it as is right now and not adopt this resolution, that money would fall under the ARPA guidelines and can be used only has outlined in the ARPA guidelines. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you. Member Tornatori and then member Krajewski and then member Ozad. Member Tornatori, go
Madam
ahead.
Chair, you stole a little bit of my thunder because basically I wanted to get back to where we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, is the benefit of doing this protects that 10 million for the county if we can't otherwise account for it under ARPA guidelines. There is no detriment to taking this 10 million and setting it aside because we can use it for virtually anything we want to, correct? That's what I heard 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. If you
all we're doing here, I'm sorry, Nick, but I'm finished. All we're doing here is ensuring that we're going to have $10 million to use for whatever reason we want and not have to worry about the ARPA guidelines and meeting them at a particular time and place for a particular thing. It doesn't affect how we're going to use it. The people that we represent are still going to get this money if we so desire to do it. And it's not disingenuous at all to suggest to protect the $10 million, which we have every right to protect to on behalf of our constituents. So there is no downside to this. I really don't understand the discussion. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We had this, we beat it to death 2 weeks ago, and I guess we're gonna do it again this morning, and that's fine. But the bottom line, as I understand it, Nick, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's no downside to the residents of this county by us taking this money under the standard allowance. We can still use it for virtually anything we want to use it, and we're protecting ourselves from the possibility that we can't find a way to use it if we keep it under the current system.
You are correct.
Thank you, Member Tornatori. And yeah, this gives us a little more flexibility with the funds. That's my understanding. So Member Krajewski, then Member Ozak. Member Krajewski?
What Member Tornatori said, we can set up our own program here to give this $10 million to people that are in substantial need of it in the county and put our own rules behind it that may not meet ARPA, but yet we can give them $10 million of money that we determine what the parameters are. And it could be the much needed people that need this money that don't qualify under ARPA, whatever program we put in place. We can do that, correct?
Yeah.
You can set up your own program. You can use it for ARPA programs. You can, it's just, yeah.
You know, Member Krajewski, you make a good point. There's a lot of people that are falling in between that crack where they don't qualify for the benefits, but they're still struggling. So that's a good point that you bring up. Member Ozak.
Thank you. Besides the Krajewski Scholarship, we could also, I think having this flexibility, obviously, we have to make the decision on how this would be spent. So it does take a lot of the ARPA restrictions off of us, but it's also really nice to be able to have this for a contingency. And one example that comes to mind, voting machines, something that is just definitely not an everyday occurrence budget-wise, but also, for instance, and it's a small amount compared to $10 million, but when Illinois was having their state crisis, the Regional Board of Education salary became the county's complete responsibility. So, we were then paying the entire 120 or 130,000. So, those sorts of contingencies could add up. So it can either be contingency or it can also go directly to the community. So I think that using this ability is a good idea.
Thank you, Member Ozak. Member Garcia. Oh, no. Okay. Any further discussion on this item? Okay, can we please have a roll call?
Member Krajewski,
Aye.
Member LaPlante, Member Ozag, Member Pachalski, Member Renahan, Member Rutledge,
Aye.
Member Schwarze, Member Selman, Member Tornatori, Member Zay, Member Chaplin,
Aye.
Member Chavez, Member Covert, Member Desart, Member DeCiani, and Member Eckhoff, Member Garcia, Member Hart.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. We move on to informational items. Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to receive and place on file informational items: A, payment of claims; B, wire transfers; C, appointments; and D, grant proposal notification.
Okay, we have a motion by Member Krajewski, a second by Member Tornatori to receive and place and file informational items A, B, C, and D. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. Do we have any more? Oh, and then Member Krajewski, I think you have one more item. Oh, no, you don't. We're fine. Okay.
Discussion.
That's a discussion, yes. Okay, so we move on to item 10, our discussion. We have our local ARPA discussion, program discussion. So welcome, Mary Catherine.
Cue things up. Wendy's gonna put up PowerPoints. I only got 3 slides because we did this before. So I'll try to be very brief, and if you guys have questions, we'll take those at the end. This presentation is really not about the townships, as I think we mentioned before. It's park districts and fire districts. If we can go to the first slide. A recap of where we've been with the park and fire districts. We had the webinar on the 16th. We got the letters of intent back on March 15th, staff responses on the 25th. The portal opens on the 28th. It's scheduled to close on May 6th. And then we're planning on bringing it back here to the board in mid-June. Next slide. This slide looks pretty familiar to you guys. It's very similar to what we've spent money on here at the county. I know we walked through it before, so let's go on to the next slide. Revamp the slide just a little bit for you guys to give you, I think, a slightly better overview. If you recall with the Park District, you approved $1 million originally. We got requests back in for 2.1 million. We have a couple projects that are ineligible. One is a improvement project for a water metering system, and one is a parks project that really was just, hey, COVID happened and more people used the park. And we're like, not good enough. No real clear nexus with what the COVID requirements are. So, but in general, I wanted to make a couple points, which are, we did get some capital projects. Some that accounts for, on the capital side, a couple bigger projects. One is from Westmont, another from Woodridge. But in general, the big takeaway from this slide is that, hey, you guys appropriated $1 million and we've got requests that nearly double that. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Fire districts are a little bit of a different story than the park districts. We didn't receive any program requests for the fire districts. They were more focused on payroll, non-payroll, and you can see a large number of capital projects. Board initially approved $3 million for the fire districts. We had one ineligible project, which was the Roselle Fire District, which we consider paper district. I think we talked about that at the last meeting, but those aren't part of our program, so we didn't allow that. In general, though, most of the projects that we got looked preliminarily eligible. I say that with a few caveats. One is that we think these numbers, all the numbers in park and fire, are going to go down because people applied for very large projects in some cases, especially on the fire district side, and those projects, you can see from the slide, the stacked bar chart at the right, there's a couple really large projects, and that accounts for largely why you're over the amount appropriated. And this is like for a whole fire department. They're going to redo their whole station, and it's not our intent to actually fund an entire project like that. We'll take a hard look at projects that come in like that with our facilities management team. The portal has a lot of requirements in terms of what they have to submit in terms of information. And we really want to limit what we pay for to what is COVID related. So if you have a room of 20 bunk beds and your new district is going to spread those out for social distancing purposes, we're going to pay for that. We're not going to pay for everything that is going to go into the cost of doing your new station. And then the second thing that I wanted to mention, another reason that's inflates these numbers, these preliminary numbers that we've gotten back from the locals, is that we have a series of districts that submitted that are partially or almost fully outside of the DuPage County area. And so it's our intent to prorate all those. So in this case, one of the slides you can see on here, it's like $800,000. That's for a town that's about 40% outside of the district. So that, Fox River, Pleasant View, Tri-State, I know on the Park District side of things, Fox Valley is like 99% outside of our district. So those projects are, they're only be funded partially based on the population that falls within the county, and the numbers overall are going to come down due to that. In general, though, on the fire district, you can see that, capital accounts for a large part of it. And depending what happens with some of these projects, that's really going to bring the numbers down. However, like with the park district, you've more than doubled the amount that you guys originally appropriated. So that's the big takeaway. And with that, I guess we can go last slide and I'll take some questions.
Thank you, Mary Catherine. So I have member Desart, member Krajewski, member Tornatori, member Desart.
Okay, thank you. Since the board only approved $3 million for the fire protection districts, and the eligible requests are 6.2, how are you going to cut that back down to $3 million?
Well,
Because
we're
we've
going to
only
come
approved
back
3
to you.
million.
We will come back to you and let you know. Here's our final number. Once we review, I think there's, Wendy started to pull up the slide with the timeline, and maybe we could talk a minute about that. Once we have reviewed all the applications, which we haven't done yet, the deadline for Park and Fire is next Friday. Once we have that, then we're going to go through and see what we think is eligible, come back to the board and say, hey, we're over $1 million or we're not over. Or, you know, but as it stands right now, we don't quite know. We just want to give you this preliminary look like, hey, heads up, we think we're going to be over. But until we go through everything with a fine tooth comb and decide what is and is not eligible, we're not going to have that number for you. But I know we had talked about coming back to you at that time with, you know, to see how you guys wanted to proceed with it. Right now, we're going to rank the projects. You know, we're going to rank them. Then we'll bring those rankings to you. So you'll be able to see there might be projects at the very bottom where you're like, hey, these are not great projects. They got they're eligible, but they were, you know, they're low ranked and from staff's perspective. So that's, I think, part of the picture too, that you'll want to see when you make your decision.
Okay, because my appetite is to leave it at $3 million.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, member Desart. Member Krajewski.
Yeah, just two things. One is, I think when we first put this out there, I think the fire protection districts and the townships were very vocal and came to us right away when we were doing $1 million. And they reached out to the board and we increased it to 3 and 3. You know, I think the park districts were just slow in getting out there. You know, I would be in favor of increasing the park district. I guess it's only 2.1, but to $2 million. And most of those are all ARPA as your initial review qualify. On the fire protection district side, I mean, structurally, the funding of fire protection districts is much different than the regular fire departments and municipalities, because the fire protection districts are funded solely on their property taxes that they levy on the residents, where a lot of these municipalities, their property taxes don't even cover half their fire department, let alone the police department. They use sales tax to offset the cost. So that's why you're seeing a lot of these projects coming forward from the fire protection districts. These are much needed projects that they just need, but they don't have the money to go forward with them. And I know in your scoring system, you were going to give points towards sharing, whether like they put up 80%, we put up 20%. I have a feeling when you go through, you're going to find some of these projects can't go forward at the fire protection district just because they don't have the other, you know, if they ask for the full $1 million and we only give them 200,000, they don't have the other 800 to even go forward with the project. So I think we may see that coming forward. I'm not for raising that 3 million, just leaving it where it is, but I'm guessing, and based on what you said, either people that are outside of DuPage County, they get a proration share, or projects won't go forward because they don't have the other funding. And that may bring that number down, but a lot of that, like you said, is payroll and capital, maybe a little outside of that, but they just don't have the money. They don't have a ability to get more money, where the municipalities are using sales tax to help offset their fire costs. But I would be for at least raising the park district one, because they just seem to be late to the game.
Thank you, member Krajewski. Member Tornatori, member Desart, or member Tornatori, and then member Ozad. Go ahead, member Tornatori.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that the park district allocation ought to be raised as well. I think they were, again, a little slower to get to the table than some of the others, and perhaps not as vocal. My conversations with the park district executive directors, a number of them, there was a significant loss of revenue to the park districts with their before school, after school activities, because people were home with their kids during COVID, and they did a significant amount of had significant expenses in order to make their park districts COVID friendly, if you will. So I'm in favor of raising that. And while both of these are doubled, let's not forget, one's only doubled by $1 million and the other is doubled by 3 million. So that's a factor I think we have to take into consideration. Mary Kath, there's a question for me. The fire districts get their money through the real estate taxes, essentially, correct? I mean, isn't that how they generally
I think Member Krajewski was just explaining
get
that,
their revenue?
right?
Okay.
Yeah, and sales tax, right? Is that, yeah.
They don't get sales tax, they get the real estate taxes.
Yeah.
And real estate taxes weren't terribly affected during COVID. I mean, people still paid their real estate taxes, presumably. There are some exceptions, obviously. So the fire districts should have, unless I'm missing something, have had a similar amount of revenue coming in during COVID than they did pre-COVID. So if that's the case, then they're different than many of the other entities that have come before us asking for money because they didn't generate that revenue either because of sales tax or programs that they weren't in effect. So for that reason, among the others that you've indicated, I'm for leaving the fire districts where they are, unless there's a compelling case to be brought by them that we're not aware of at this time. I just don't see a significant loss in revenue if their source of revenue is real estate taxes, and real estate taxes have been paid, and they're virtually the same. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Tortori. I have Member Ozag, the Member Zay, the Member DeCiani. Member Ozag, go ahead. Okay, thank you. Member Zay?
You know, everybody starts to want to, do we have any, what's our balance on the ARPA money?
About $30 million.
Minus 10 or just 20 plus the 10 slush fund that we just put together?
Minus 10.
So
But,
it's 30 total.
but
It's
with
30
that,
total.
minus 10, but just a reminder, we can spend that 10 on any ARPA purposes. So
Well, I mean, the fire districts, I mean, I live in a fire district, maybe where Sam's is, you have the fire department, but yeah, their revenue was stable, but their calls probably quadrupled or whatever during COVID. So their expense and overtime and everything else was probably astronomical compared to everybody else who was out there. So I would think, you said most of it was some of it was capital, a lot of it was salary, right?
right. Yeah, we have kind of a mix, but these couple big capital projects skew the numbers for sure. The rest is divided a lot more evenly amongst all the districts, the payroll, for example.
You don't seem in favor of capital projects.
No comment.
Well,
No,
well, I mean,
all
just-
these,
I mean, it's just kind of, since we're spending a large amount of money on capital projects, I wouldn't automatically exclude a fire department that might need it and had ARPA problems with social distancing and whatever for these first responders. And then all of a sudden, we're not going to include it. I think that needs to be given a fair look, just like we've done everything around here with all our buildings. They're in no different situation than we are.
we'll follow the rules. That's correct.
Thank you, Member Zay. I have Member DeCiani and then Member Eckhoff.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I think we need to be mindful that unlike CARES money that the county received that we distributed, ARPA money went directly to the municipalities as well as to the county. In towns like Elmhurst that has their own fire department, they had to take care of their own needs with the ARPA money they received. I believe the proportion of ARPA money, whether you have a fire department or have a fire district, is the same. So it would be nice to see some of our towns that have fire districts step up a little bit on top of what we're doing. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. I think we should be. But I think in these situations, we should, being that the municipalities received direct ARPA dollars, and they got the same allocation based on population, whether they had a fire district or a fire department, they should be stepping up to the plate a little bit too, along with the county and helping those districts. It's only fair. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Very good point, Member DeCiani. I agree with you on that. Member Eckhoff.
Not that we don't have enough people asking for some type of assistance, but I did want to note I was contacted, I've mentioned this to Nick before, by the Wheaton Sanitary District that's got a project that they would like to apply for funds. So if we ever get to the point where we can do that, I'd like to be able for them to apply.
Thank you, Member Eckhoff. I have Member Garcia and then Member Tornatore. Member Garcia, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I just want to agree with Member Zay in terms of the fire district in the responsibilities that they had during COVID. Not only did they have numerous more amount of calls, but they also started new programs where they went and tested like seniors in their homes, so they didn't have to come out. So there was a lot of expenses. So, you know, that along with the park district, I know my town's park district, they actually changed their whole, because their senior center closed down, but then they changed that to fill in, to help students who couldn't go to school because their parents still work. So they turned it into a childcare center. So they were there helping the communities. And so I know I look forward to in June, you know, seeing, or a little bit sooner, seeing what they've applied for. And I think that I'm just asking the board to have an open mind on exactly everything that they went through
Yes.
this pandemic.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Very good points as well, Member Garcia. Member Tornatori.
Hi, just to be clear, my mind is still open. I'm not suggesting that the fire district shouldn't get more money. I said I'd like to get a compelling reason, and I'm not for some of these capital projects. I don't want to spend ARPA money on sub-zero things for the kitchen. Okay, we need to do what we need to do to make them whole. And my only point with the real estate tax is what the sources of revenue were virtually the same. I don't deny for one moment that they spent more money and may very well be entitled to it. Just show us where it is. So, thank you.
Thank you, Member Tornatori. Member Krajewski.
I assume in your scoring, to go to member DeCiani, that if they put in for a capital project and say it's the village of Woodridge or Darien, which have fire protection districts, and they put in there that they're getting that village to also contribute funding, that they'll score higher and be at the top of the project, because that was part of your scoring, was to get multiple partners in on the deal. So if some of those towns are kicking in money too on their application, as member DeCiani said they should, they would score high and they would be eligible. They would beat out another capital project probably in scoring. Therefore, that would be the one that they're funding, which would make sense for what DeCiani was saying. And I think, I would need to favor that too. If they're getting participation from one of the other towns, that's going to show in your scoring.
Correct. Yeah. So we're gonna, trim down what's ineligible on the capital side, and then we're gonna score all the projects. And different projects, we have different criteria for our programs than we do for our capital projects. But, the profile of some of these is going to look very, to Member Zay's comment, it's going to look very similar to what we did here at the county. And so, eligible projects here at the county are going to be eligible projects out in the districts too. So.
And then I would just maybe see and get a consensus about the park district, and maybe allocating some additional funds for that, whether it's $500,000 or.
I think when Mary Catherine comes back in June, I think at that time we can decide, whether we want to increase, maybe both for fire and for park district. But, I appreciate the work that you've done on this right now. And I think when you come back to us, I think in June, you said that you'll probably have a lot more information, and we'll have more information to make our decision on.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for the good discussion. Okay, and then with that, we move on to our unincorporated DuPage cannabis discussion. So I will start this off. So as you know, cannabis in Illinois is legal for both medical and recreational use effective January 1st, 2020. In October of 2019, an 10-8 vote of the county board opted out of unincorporated recreational sales of cannabis, with some board members noting that the issue could return in a few years, and that time has come. I've heard from several board members that they would like this body to reconsider this issue to allow recreational sales of cannabis in the unincorporated areas. I've spoken with some members about the best way to move forward with this item. Some feel that they would like to have the state's attorney come in, the sheriff, finance department, and the health department to give presentations again. Others said that they believe a memo from the sheriff, state's attorney, health department would be sufficient. For some background, on May 11th, 2021, the Lake County Board approved an ordinance that permits adult use cannabis businesses in unincorporated areas subject to certain zoning restrictions. On April 19th, 2021, the Kane County Board voted to allow recreational use marijuana businesses to open in unincorporated areas of the county. Will County and McHenry County both allow for the sale of recreational cannabis. Naperville and Downers Grove, for example, originally opted out of recreational sales of cannabis. However, both municipalities now allow for the recreational sale. Addison, Carroll Stream, Lombard, Oak Brook Terrace, Villa Park, and Winfield all allow for recreational sales of cannabis. It's my understanding that if the board were to allow recreational sales of cannabis, it would be subject to certain zoning restrictions. So it's important to note that these zoning restrictions will still need to be established through the development committee. So what I'm looking for today is consensus on how the board, how this committee wants to move forward. Do we want to bring the sheriff, the health department, the state's attorney back in to give presentations? Or do we want to move forward and just have a memo from each of them in our packet? So I'm opening this up for discussion. How do you all feel? So Member Tornatore, please go ahead, and then Member Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, and members of the board may or may not know, you and I had some discussions with this with staff. And it was my suggestion that over perhaps next couple of meetings that we do have the stakeholders, as I've called them, come forward with an updated presentation. I don't think that it's overkill or kill at all to have finance, the state's attorney, the health department come back and talk to us about what this is about. Just so we understand, I have no moral objection at all to the use of cannabis. It's legal, it's fine. My big issue with this is what the economic benefit, if any, would be to the county versus whatever the detriment would be from a financial situation and enforcement situation. And as you know, one of my major concerns is the effect to the existing cannabis dispensaries in the municipalities that are out there right now. We've got, I think, 10 of them. It's been indicated to me through data that we've received through staff that every time a new dispensary opens, it basically reduces the amount of money that the existing dispensaries get. It's a dilution of business. There is no significant increase in the cannabis use or purchases of cannabis when there's a new dispensary open. So it stands to reason logically that if we were to give 2 or 3 new licenses for unincorporated dispensaries, that the existing businesses that have spent, in some cases, millions of dollars would lose money because we would be taking some of their business away. That is a concern to me, not only from a business standpoint, because those people got into this business for a variety of reasons, one of which was because we weren't in the business. And now if we change, that's going to affect their business plan. It's also going to affect the municipalities because they're not going to get the same revenue that they would get if that were going into unincorporated areas. So that to me is a key concern. We could go through the numbers and have Jeff bring the numbers back, but I think it's been generally presented to you and I that the amount of money is going to be relatively insignificant to the county in terms of the revenue for 1 or 2 or 3 additional licenses. A broader picture, and this is a question, I guess, for the entire board. We have a lot of discussions at finance from things that I think have very little to do with finance. And I'm glad we're using finance as almost like a committee of the whole. But the health department, the state's attorney, the sheriff, these other businesses that hopefully will come forth and give us information, I think at a minimum, we should hear from them and they should be notified when we do this, especially if it's going to be at a finance committee meeting, because not everybody is up and around at 8 o'clock in the morning that otherwise might be available at 10. So if we're going to have these discussions that are more than financial in nature and have them at the finance committee, I just want to be sure that everybody is part of it. I believe that we ought to have more than just a memo from the stakeholders. We've waited this long, waiting another couple of months to have a full and robust discussion with all of the information, I think is the responsible thing to do. And I particularly think that each and every one of the current dispensary owners and operators should be notified when we're going to have those discussions so they can come forward and be a part of it through public comment or otherwise, because I am concerned that those businesses are going to be affected by a decision if we decide to do dispensaries in unincorporated DuPage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Tornatore. I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Member Desart.
Thank you. I respect the heck out of my colleague, Member Tornatore, but I have to disagree that existing businesses might lose money when a new business opens up. I mean, there's a gas station on every corner. Just ask the mattress stores that are on every corner. Starbucks, you got it. So I disagree with that premise. But the reason I raised my hand initially is because I just would like my memory refreshed from zoning. That I remember when we talked about this before, Paul Haas, that in unincorporated DuPage, there were only like 3 or 4 sites. Has that changed? There were 3 or 4 sites even available to open a dispensary.
There we go. So when we did our most recent research on where sites would be available in unincorporated based on the new state statutes, and recall the new state statute eliminated the 1,000-foot distance requirement from protected uses. So when we did the new research, we found there are approximately 193 sites that would qualify, and the qualifications include that you have to be at least 1,000 feet away from existing dispensaries, even though those dispensaries are in municipalities. We also put some additional requirements on it just based on typical zoning requirements, which requires you have to have at least a 25,000 square foot piece of land. The net result of that is about 193 sites would be available unincorporated.
Thank you, Paul. I have Member Zay, then Member Pachowski, Member Garcia, and then Member Krajewski.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
We did put in effect the 3% on all sales. Can we get what kind of revenue we received so far from cannabis sales for the county? It'd be nice to know. It's got to be a big number.
Multiple numbers. So our revenue in 2021 was 127,000. That was the cannabis use tax. There was a change at the beginning of 2022, because when this discussion happened in 2021, we checked with the state of Illinois, and we were not receiving the sales taxes for that. But in our first receipt of sales tax we received just a couple of weeks ago, we made $241,000 in for that would be January sales we just received. If you multiply that out, it would be about 2.89 million for 2022 that we would expect to receive.
Okay. So the state made a mistake. Are we going to recoup any of that money that we were not receiving sales tax for?
So
I guess if you ever go and look, I mean, you can see it on the internet, when you go and look at anybody who buys anything, the receipt has about 25 taxes on it or whatever.
Absolutely.
I mean, where did that money go to?
We did not receive the sales tax for past years because the state claimed that it was never filed with the state of Illinois. And that was rectified once we went down or once we checked it out and looked at it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have Member Tornatore, do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I'll make this here. I think the follow-up question, at least for me, is if we were to add 2 dispensaries in unincorporated DuPage, how much more money would we receive?
Okay.
Based on the numbers that we have and the number of dispensaries. And while Paul is here, I just want Member Desart, I appreciate her respect. The reality is I didn't come up with my conclusion about diminishing or dilution of sales with new, that's empirical data that I got from Paul, that he got from Addison and some other dispensaries. So there's some basis behind what I said.
So I'll handle the second one for Paul first. So we talked to Addison, their financial team, not the dispensaries, but Addison. And they were one of the first ones out of the gate with dispensaries in DuPage County. And they have noticed that when everyone goes in a new one, they do see a reduction. And that's from from Addison themselves. Regarding your other question about what would it mean for adding a dispensary. Now, if you remember, on in-corporate dispensaries, DuPage County receives 3% of the tax. If the board were to authorize the addition of dispensaries in unincorporated, we would receive 3.75. So you're looking at a net difference of 0.75. Assuming that the 241,000 we received at the beginning of 2022, if you assume that for 12 months, we're collecting for each dispensary, we have 10 of them, $24,000, tax revenue per month per dispensary right now in incorporated. So if you were to say, okay, what do we make if we add one in unincorporated versus incorporated? So that's the distinction, because you have to say, this dispensary, if it doesn't go in unincorporated, will it go in incorporated? And assuming that they will go if we don't allow it, they'll go over here. Your net difference yearly is $72,000 income for the county. So if you add one in unincorporated versus incorporated, it's 72,000. Now, clearly, if somebody builds something and they will only build unincorporated and never go incorporated, that's a higher number. But if you assume they're going to go either one, the difference is 72,000 a year.
Okay, thank you so much, Nick. Member Pachowski?
I think we ought to see whether or not anything has changed. I don't need to have the dispensaries coming in saying, well, gee, if you open another one, I'm going to lose business. It's not about that. It just seems to me that we ought to get a business plan. And, if one or two licenses, it's going to spread it out. Every bar in Addison gets 5 gaming machines, and they open a new bar, another 5 gaming machines, and they all seem to be doing pretty well. And I don't know what profit or what the loss will be, but it seems to me what's changed. And before I have a presentation, I'd like to know that. And if we're talking about a location, we should be specific in our location as well, and whether there's a need in that community. I assume anytime you open up a new business that competes with somebody else, that's why it's called competition. And I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I'm willing to take a look at it. But I think the county should at least take a look at expanding these if it makes sense. And if it doesn't, then we decide not to.
Thank you, Member Pachowski. I have Member Garcia, Member Krajewski, Member Selman, Member Hart, Member Ozog, and then Member Krajewski. So Member Garcia.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. Yeah, real quickly, I just wanted to go back to whether we wanted a presentation here or we wanted just kind of some kind of memo. I myself would just prefer a memo from all these stakeholders, because I can actually refer back to the facts and figures that they're giving me, and I can do a little research on it, whether they're just presenting it. And I just feel like that I would get more out of that than if they were to just talk here. So that's my preference on that. I think that I agree with Member Dessart. I don't think that this is an issue where we have to worry about whether there is some kind of competition. But I do believe that the more we can do to help with people with mental health, this is a huge help for people who have mental health issues. And I think we have to really make sure that we're keeping the fact that this isn't like what everybody just does to have fun. Sometimes this is something that people do because they absolutely need to get, and our mental health issues have quadrupled, triple. I mean, they're out of they're off the chart due to the pandemic. And so, anything we can do to help people to actually survive and get through right now, some of the illnesses they're dealing with, I'm all in favor of.
Thank you, Member Garcia. Member Krajewski.
I can just go with a memo too. I think this has gone on long enough. With regard to the businesses and the competition, I think the state issued a certain amount of licenses, and we've talked about this in development. Paul could probably tell us there's more licenses coming, more that are going to be issued. They were doing it over time. So of course, the first business here is going to make the most money, and as more start coming, but it was never anticipated that we're only going to have 10 in DuPage. There's more licenses coming, and they're going to start locating, you know, and they want to be on major roads. They want to be, you know, where the people are going to be. They're going to not want to open one next to the one that's already there. They're going to want to find one where there's not an area. And pretty soon, you know, there are going to be more coming. When the rules first came out, we looked at this, there was only 3 spots that could go. And honestly, no business was going to go there anyways, because that wasn't on a major arterial artery where a lot of traffic came. Now, under the change in the state law and what we've looked at development, we've narrowed it down to 196 places. They're on major highways where businesses would want to locate. But as these new licenses start being issued, they're going to come into DuPage. If they don't want to come down and incorporate, because we don't allow it yet, they'll just locate in the municipality that's around there, that's in a region. So, you know, the longer we wait on this, if we really want it, pretty soon they're going to all be here. And, you know, a number of communities like Naperville changed and Downers Grove changed. They initially said no, but as they started coming, they reversed their roles. But it's here. If we want to give them the opportunity to locate on some major roads in unincorporated DuPage, you know, we need to move forward. If we continue to wait, you know, these new licenses will come out. They'll locate in other towns that are allowing it. And, you know, similar to when we did the gaming, as Member Pachowski just pointed out, we initially said no, and more municipalities started opening them up. And eventually we said, okay, now in unincorporated, you got the same right. But it's always going to be cannibalizing. When you open up a new Mariano's in Westmont, my district, the Jewel and Downers Grove is losing some of the sales. It goes from one town to another, but that's just the competition.
Yep. Thank you, Member Krajewski. Member Selman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think so. For your original question, you had asked if you want us to have a presentation or a memo. I think maybe a good compromise would be offer if they want to do a presentation. And if, you know, the state's attorney or the sheriff say, I don't really have any updates, they might prefer a memo, but I think either would probably be okay. What I am hearing is that there's been, you know, changes to the law. That have had some changes in the GIS map, and we've had updates of the other municipalities. So I think just a plan of how the whole board can get updated on those changes, whether we're going to do it through development or through finance. Either, I don't necessarily have a preference, but I think just telling us that plan so we can all get the same information. And for the question about competition, I think the other aspect it would be helpful to consider is, I think since January of 2020, there's not been a month in Illinois that we haven't exceeded the tax revenue expected, and we've certainly had new dispensaries opening. So I think the demand it's somewhat inelastic at this point, but some data to help us understand that would be helpful. So maybe you could comment on what sort of you see that the next steps after this being.
Yes. So well, as soon as we figure out the consensus, then we'll go over the next steps. So that'll help me figure out our next steps. So Member Hart.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. I agree with Member Tornatori. I think I would like to have the stakeholders come in to address our questions most importantly. I think there's been a lot of things that have changed since we've had the discussion last, a global pandemic, exacerbating mental health crisis, same with the substance use crisis. So even though I think it's warranted to review this issue, I think it would be better if we had the stakeholders here to answer all of our questions in real time. That said, I did have just a quick question, Nick, not to put you back on the spot, but I thought I heard you say we didn't receive tax revenue previously because County of DuPage didn't file a form to the state. Is that what I heard? And why is that? Could you give more background on that?
So when the discussion occurred in 2021, there was some discussion about why our revenue was so low. We started, staff looked into that, compared to the collar counties, looked at them. We then followed up with the state of Illinois, and it was determined that they didn't have our initial filing. All we were receiving up to that point was the use tax, not the sales tax for the cannabis. We looked back at the 2019 resolution, and as far as why it wasn't filed at that point, it said in there that the resolution should be filed, and it was not filed. At least the state could not find it.
And whose responsibility was it to file?
The resolution, the original resolution, I'll read it to you, and then you guys can make that decision. And this ordinance shall be full force and effect from and after its passage and approval and publication as required by law, provided, however, that the tax provided for herein shall take effect for all sales on or after the first day of September 2020. Copies of this ordinance shall be certified by the clerk and sent to the Illinois Department of Revenue prior to October 30, 2019.
So it's the clerk's responsibility.
That's how the ordinance. Now, we talked to the clerk and they have stated that they did file and I don't know where the mistake was.
Okay,
What's that?
yeah, Nick, I think it would be helpful, Member Chapman, if you're good with it, if you could have the information sent to the board on that.
Sure,
that'd be
sure.
great.
Yep.
And then can we get that corrected?
It is
okay,
correct. It is
okay.
absolutely correct. The very next day that we determined it was not filed, I mean, Jennifer and her team and finance, I mean, we sent it, we called down to the state, we verified, we have writing, and we have gotten our appropriate sales tax now. So we are in good stead with the state. So there's nothing to fix anymore. And there's no way to go back for the, lack of sales tax in 2021.
Okay, I'd like to see all the information, so that'd be great if that could be distributed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Member Hart. So Member Ozak?
Thank you. I wanted to point out that besides, as Member Garcia referred to, mental health usage, there are practitioners who will not prescribe medical use. And so some people are using this for various medical conditions, and some are substantiated, some are not, but there is a medical element as well. So I'd be in favor of us moving forward with this. And I don't need to see, I'd rather see a written report from the various other stakeholders from our other departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ozak. Member Krajewski?
Yeah, Nick, do we know, were the municipalities charging the sales tax for us? I could understand why the state would say no if they weren't charging it. Were they charging the share that we were supposed to be getting?
It's my understanding that all the sales tax was charged, but the state is not allowed to release that unless if they get the documentation.
So the county sales tax was being charged by all these municipalities.
That's my
And it was
understanding.
being sent to the state, but because they didn't have the form, the states all of a sudden decide they're going to keep it. I would think we want the state's attorney looking at that, because if they collected the
explore
tax, it's one thing if they didn't collect the tax, you can't go back and charge somebody. You don't even know who the people are that bought the stuff. But if they were charging the tax and our clerk forgot to file the form, it seems to me we still have a right to that money. I'd like our state's attorney to look at that. I could never figure out why that revenue number was so low. I was talking to Village of Westmont and they're telling me how they're making $600,000 in tax, and we got so little. It makes sense now why we didn't get it. But it sounds like it's like a $2 million number.
2.8 million.
Yeah, is what we were getting. And before we got so it's 2.8
200,000.
million, would have probably maybe a little less because things have gone up.
Our
That's a big
estimate,
freaking number.
our estimate is, because realize that these shops have ramped up over the past 2 years.
Understood.
Our
Yeah.
estimate is 1.2 million in revenue loss.
Yeah. Well, one, I think I want our state's attorney to look at that, because if they were charging the tax and it's just a matter we didn't send the form down, then they got the money, they shouldn't be able to keep it. But if they weren't charging the tax, that's a different story. But I would want the state's attorney to look at that and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you, Member Krajewski. Member DeCiani?
Thank you, Chairman. I think we need to be cognizant. I definitely want to hear from the stakeholders, especially the health department. The reason why I was one of the 10 no's on the original vote, I do agree with the medical side of it, but I don't agree with the recreational side, is because the health department at the time indicated that this was a gateway drug to opioids and even heroin. Our numbers, our deaths are off the charts. They're at record numbers. So for us to be talking about this at a time when those numbers are where they're at, up 60% over the last 6 months, I believe. I mean, we really need to be cognizant. I know we need dollars, but is it worth putting our people at risk, knowing that the health department gave us the advice that this is a gateway drug? So those are concerns for me, and I want to hear from the health department for sure on this, especially given our numbers. If our numbers were down, I'd feel differently, but our numbers are skyrocketing. So, and we're getting a 3% across the board, which is good. So in the municipal areas, we're getting collecting revenue. So for us to, also keep in mind, I know other municipalities are doing this, but similar to gaming, which I voted no on as well, DuPage County is the bellwether of the county. So when towns like Elmhurst see the county all of a sudden doing gaming or doing marijuana, they are in a position now to potentially want to do it more. So if DuPage County says, hey, we're staying neutral on this, we're not going to engage, it puts other towns in a situation where they might not make that move. So, and considering that I think the majority of our towns do not have facilities, I think that's important for us to think about. So again, the opioid deaths are off the charts. The health department indicated this was a gateway drug and was not in favor of this. So I am, again, on the medical side, I understand that, and we do have access to that. Not an issue. It's pretty easy to get a medical card. Many people that I know that have issues such as autism and seizure disorders access this all the time, not an issue. So I don't think the recreational side is going to be a detriment to those folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Member DeCiani. Okay, I have Member Rutledge and then Member LaPlante. Member Rutledge.
Thank you, Chair Chaplin. As part of this discovery, I would like to see some demographics from these dispensaries that, certainly they have a pretty good track record of their clientele right now, because my understanding is the majority of their customers are over 50. And I really don't see a lot of opioid deaths in that demographic. So that would be something I'd like to take a look at, because I don't think it's the gateway that some might say it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rutledge. Member LaPlante.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. I would also just like to say that correlation does not equal causation. And so that's something that needs to be kept very front of mind when discussing this. I also am asking for an in-person. I think that would be wonderful, because we do want to be able to ask and receive questions on the spot. But again, to keep that very, very front of mind, correlation does not equal causation. Thank you.
Thank you, Member LaPlante. So any other questions from the committee? Okay, so thank you. I appreciate the good discussion. I just have a couple comments and questions that I'd like to share with all of you. So this is really not a financial decision for me. I mean, we're bringing it to finance because it does have a financial impact on the county, but I think it's important to bring it forward because it is legal in this state. And by having it illegal, there is still that stigma with it. And I think by making it legal, it helps with that stigma, with that negative stigma with cannabis users, right? So I think it's important in moving forward with our social justice and equity pillar that, we're going to allow cannabis in the incorporated area, because there's also a social justice aspect to this legislation. And unfortunately, it hasn't really been very effective, but part of these dispensaries are supposed to be eligible for those that were impacted negatively by maybe harsh jail sentences for using marijuana. So I think, it's to me, it's a social issue as well. And all of the other Collier counties have now legalized the use of recreational marijuana in unincorporated areas. So I think it's something that we should reconsider. But Nick, if you could just come up here for a second. So if we can get, I'd really like to see a show of hands. Member Ozak, if you can just stay for a second. How many people would like to have presentations of, the sheriff, the health department, and finance, and the state's attorney? Can I see by a show of hands who thinks presentations are necessary? Yes, necessary, yes. Okay, so it looks like we have the overwhelming majority would like to have the presentation. So we'll move forward with the presentations. But Nick, so can you explain the next step? So if we put a resolution on for cannabis, it's my understanding if we were to pass that, then it would go to development for the zoning. Is that correct? Could you just give us how the next steps would, how we move forward?
The paths based upon the show of hands, it sounds like you would like me to line up all of the various departments to come in, do the presentations, and I will talk to them. At that point, a resolution will be brought forward for consideration. It must go through, my guess is the resolution probably wouldn't go through finance, but we can talk about that. But eventually it has to go through board for approval. And there would have to be a caveat in there along lines, and we work with the state's attorney, whereas the development committee would establish the necessary guidelines and requirements and licensing system associated with this. So even if a ordinance were to be passed, people could not start building a dispensary. It will take several months for the development committee to develop these and go through the public hearing process. So we would definitely add that, because if we don't have that in there, then the next day theoretically people could build anything they wanted to anywhere they wanted to. So we have to establish, if that's the will of the board, we have to establish the guidelines through development.
Okay, and then member Tornatore, you mentioned, would you want to have this meeting in a committee of the whole rather than finance? Because we don't really have a committee of the whole committee, which maybe we need to start, having that kind of a committee maybe next year. But, do you want me to should we set it up under a special committee of the whole meeting, Nick? Can we do that?
Everything runs through stormwater. No, I'm fine with keeping it in finance because it's best to flush it out. I just want to make sure everybody who's going to be affected by it knows it's going to be done at finance.
Okay.
That's all.
Great. Okay, thank you. So I think we have our plan set. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the discussion on this. And then we have to quickly move into executive session. Oh, any new business? Okay, any old business? Okay, so pursuant to Open Meetings Act 5 ILCS 1202, we're going to executive session for review of minutes. Can I have a motion? Motion by DeCiani, second by